Today on Community Watch, we will be talking with Gary Mitchum Reeves and listening to some of his stories about his adventures in Rome in the 1950s and 60s and later. So stay with us. Community Watch starts now. Welcome to Community Watch, and we are glad to have you with us this week. Greg is hopefully going to join us a little late after we get into our discussion today. He had a conflict, but I'm hoping we'll still be joined by Mr. Shropshire before we're done today. Our guest is one of our returning favorite guests and absolutely one of the best storytellers I have ever met. If you have not heard a story told by Gary Mitchum Reeves, I'm not sure you have actually heard a story before, but welcome back to the show today.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Always like to be with you fellas.
Well, I know for folks who are unfamiliar with your history, you are a star of your own podcast, which is still available, called Mitchum. And I encourage all of you to look for that and listen to some of Mitchum's stories. But you may have heard some of his story or a good bit of his story on the podcast Undisclosed, where he was featured in it was a whole season of Undisclosed, one of their seasons. And the focus of that story was your conviction of a murder that you have always said you did not commit. And they really looked into the details of that and offered a lot of very compelling evidence that your story is correct. And so I know one of your motivations today is to try to clear your name of that conviction, even though you have served your time by now.
Yes.
So I do encourage folks to go listen to that Undisclosed podcast and also the Mitchum podcast for a lot more. But your history and background in this area go into multiple areas. And I know we had talked about today focusing on some experiences you had at the Rome, I guess was it the city jail or was the county jail there then?
Well, yeah, back then they had the city jail, and then they had the county jail was the sheriff's department. You had the city police, the county police, sheriff's department. Man, you had a lot of police in here back then. GBI, FBI, revenue man. Now, I met the revenue man pretty often in my rearview mirror. But yes, the old jail, the old city jail was located back then under the city auditorium.
Now, when you say back then, when are we talking about?
50s, 60s in my days.
Okay.
Back then. And I was in the old city jail. Now, they never caught me for running moonshine. I always managed to get away from them back then. But they did catch me for a few other things back then. So the old city jail was located under the city auditorium, and it was you. They had a walkway through there. If you were in the cell, you could see the parking lot. So the times I was in there, I took a close watch on that parking lot, looking for my pop to come sign my bill, get me out, pay my fine, whatever. So, but the old county jail was run by the sheriff's department, which back then Joe Adams was the sheriff of Floyd County. Good guy, great cook. He did a lot of barbecues and stuff and would raise money. But the old county jail was located there by the river. I did manage to break in there a few times. Funny story about the county jail. When Joe Adams was the sheriff, he smoked a cigar all the time. And people, you could walk all the way around the place, and somebody had tied a half a pint of whiskey on a string type thing, and they were trying to pull it up to get it up to them. Well, they felt a little tug, like it hung, and then it loosened and came on up. But when they got it up, it had a cigar tied on the end of it. Joe had walked by and caught it and got the liquor and tied his cigar on the end of the string. I always thought that was a funny story.
And what I mean, tell me more about that incident and what happened as a result of that.
Well, they didn't get their whiskey. They got Joe's cigar. So I didn't witness it. It's just a funny story that I was told by people over the years. A lot of stuff like that going on. But Joe Adams was the sheriff of Floyd County for a long time. His son John became sheriff, and I really liked him. John did me a big favor one time, and I was in the jail one time when Joe was the sheriff. I don't know, a fight or something got in that county jail. The county police didn't have a home back then. Well, yeah, they did. Back on the Kingston Highway, there was the old folks' home. And the county police was kind of, they didn't have a good office anywhere. So they ended up out there at the old folks' home. My brothers told a guy from Atlanta, they had him up here one time, funny guy. He said, those county police went out there and just kicked those old people out, took over that place. Yeah,
where on Kingston would this be?
Well, it would be there where the old folks' home was then. This was in the 50s. If you're going toward Kingston, it was on the left before you got to Sherwood Forest. The rock rested there now. But before you got to it, on the left was just a home for old folks back then. And I think now it's, what is that out there now? The ball game, they play ball out there and stuff like that.
Oh, this building. Is it it's not Etowah Park, or maybe it is Etowah Park.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. But that was where it was at that time. And then later, the city jail moved from where telling you about under the city auditorium. They moved over on West First Street, I think that's what it was called. I made that one a couple of times. It was a different world back then. Just a different, altogether different. the way things are now.
Yeah. So the city jail that would have been there, I guess, where the water department is now.
Yes, where you pay your water bill. I tell you, I think I've mentioned him before. There was, yeah, I've really never met him, but Lonnie Adcock was a retired city policeman, and man, he's written some good stories. I really like reading these things that he writes. Uh, I would only meet him. He never did arrest me, but I would see him at the jail on my way in or on my way out. But he seemed to always just be a gentleman, a kind person. Like I said, I never was arrested by him. Might have been a different story if that had happened, but I like to read his stories. He's cool. Maybe I get to meet him someday.
Well, on your podcasts, because I know those experiences are, I guess, tied more closely to your conviction, but you focus more on your experiences in prison than you do in jail. But you had some. I remember some interesting stories about being in the city jail, and what that was like.
Yeah, I tell one of the stories about the Chow Town used to be up on North Broad, and I think the car wash is there now where the Chow Town used to be, and they had the curb service. And I was there one night talking to a couple of girls. These guys rode by. They snorted something off, and I answered back. Regretted that big time. I wanted to fight, and I told him go ahead and get out. He didn't look that big in that car, but when he started getting out of that car, I didn't think his legs was ever going to get out. And he got out, and man, this guy, he was tall, the tall man. And about that time, the city police pulled up, thank God, and put us both in the car, carried us both to the city jail, and put us in the same cell.
Mm-hmm. He
said, you still want to fight? I said, brother, I didn't want to fight when you started getting out of the car. Anyway, the guy, we would run into each other over the years, and we'd have a good laugh about this story. I hope he's still around. I can't remember his name. I do know that he ended up in Vietnam. He made it home, and we'd see each other now and then. But yeah, they put us in the same cell. But no, I didn't want to fight anymore.
Well, it sounds like they were encouraging it.
Yeah, I think they were. I think they were hoping we would want to fight some more, but no, we didn't. The county jail, the county jail was, man, that place was something else. The jails back then, they didn't have phones, didn't have air conditioning, didn't have, it was a tough place to be. But in 1974, when I ended up charged with the murder at the county jail, that was a rough time. And
now that at that time, 74, where was the county jail?
Right there on the Fifth Avenue, across from the old courthouse. What is it there now? The government property is there now. The city police department.
Right, their offices.
They're all in there now.
Yeah.
But the old county jail was there. Lynn Garner was the sheriff at this time when I arrived in 1974.
Well, we're coming up on a break, so I think I get a sense that you're about to get started on a lengthier story. So let's take a little break, and we come back, we'll get the full tale. So stay with us. We'll be back with Mitchum Reeves right after this.
For For 50 years, Georgia Highlands College has been a community that takes charge. At GHC, we have a mission to provide access to an outstanding education, meeting the career needs of the region, and helping our communities thrive. Every student we graduate becomes a celebration we never forget. We are more than Chargers. We are Chargers taking charge for 50 years and beyond.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Gary Mitchum Reeves, who is in the middle of telling us a little bit about the jail system in Rome and Floyd County some years ago. And when we interrupted you, you were going to tell us a little bit about some of the individuals and your experiences at the county jail right there on Fifth Avenue.
Yes. Well, let me, back then, the jails didn't have phones in them. And you didn't have to wear those orange jumpsuits. Whatever you got in jail was what you had on. That's what you stayed on till you got out of there. But the old Floyd County Jail was, it was a nightmare. I arrived there in 1974 in August when I was charged with the murder, and I had no memory of nothing. That's another story. But anyway, when they transferred me from the city jail to the county jail, and one of the deputies, he's no longer around, but I was sick, man. I didn't know I'd been drugged, and I asked him if he could give me something before they locked me up there, and he said the county couldn't afford to take me to the hospital, and I was going to get the death penalty anyway, so why should they waste their money? That's what greeted me at the county jail. Let me move on to some lighter stories. I didn't mean to get into that one, but the way my memory works when I'm telling this stuff, things come to me. I never know what's going to pop in my brain when it comes back. But so anyway, I'm at the county jail, and because I had no memory, the judge at that time ordered me sent to Milledgeville, which was the state hospital. And I had no clue where I was going. I'd heard of Milledgeville, I'd heard all these horror stories about Milledgeville. So after being in the county jail for a few weeks, I ended up in Milledgeville. It was called the Binion Building for the criminal insane. Now that was a trip. One thing about it though, man, at least it was air conditioned, that was a good plus. And the food wasn't that bad. But you were put in a day room, and they would give you drugs and stuff to keep you drowsy. So some of the guys in there, they were there trying to beat a rap. Some of them were crazy. Some of them were just there, man. And so I've met a couple of boys that they were in there just trying to beat the rap. And we would end up making friends and play poker and stuff like that. And you stayed in their day room all day. Then at night, you were locked in a dormitory. And I'd never seen anything like this. There was a guy there that had these fits. What do you call it, Linda? The guy would be laying flat on his back, and the next thing you know, he was up in the air, man. These fits would just throw him up in the air, and I forget. They'd have to come in there and get him. See, that's having seizures, yes. And the guards would come in there and keep him from swallowing his tongue and dying. So those were some horror stories there. I was there 9 weeks. So then they brought me back to the county jail. the good thing about the whole trip there was, like I said, it was, at least it was cool there. They brought me back to the county jail. Oh, no, wait a minute. I got one more story there of Milledgeville. So my folks got a guy to drive them down there to visit with me, and I still ain't got no lawyer. And my pop was tore up, and after they left, it was bothering me to see him in the condition he was in, worried like he was. So they got me back up there. Well, anytime you got a visit, you had to be strip searched and all that good stuff. But that's humiliating enough as it was. So then this guard says to me, you're going to get the death penalty for killing that woman. You know, good grief, man. I'm being tried before I even get there.
Yeah.
It was the way it was. You're not innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until you try to prove yourself innocent, which I've been trying to do that since 1974, and I ain't got there yet. But so they take me back to the county jail, and by then they have appointed an attorney, and he's walking. I'm meeting him for the first time, and he was drunk. I thought, oh man, they fixing to put this drunk man in the cell with me. Meet your lawyer. and the first thing the guy said to me was, have you got $5? I could kind of look. Oh man. Well, that was my lawyer. And that's stories for another time. So
Well, let me get some clarity on the timeline of some of this. So you have been in Milledgeville for how long when you were there?
9 weeks.
9 weeks.
I was arrested August the 13th. So figured that up. About 9 weeks, yeah, when they brought me back. I really hated to come back. You know, I kind of got used to the place in Milledgeville. At least it was cool.
Yeah. And when you returned, that's when you were introduced to your attorney.
Yeah, they had decided to an appointment. I see. After I was arrested, man, I lost everything. I mean, they got everything I had. My money, what money I had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bad enough to be in there with nothing, but really bad to be in there with no memory. Now, when Undisclosed did my story, and then they discovered, investigated, and we heard in 2017, episode 10 of Undisclosed podcast, we heard who did the murder for the first time with the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They had a huge audience, Undisclosed did, and they had found the lady who knew the person that did the murder and who had told her how he did the murder and why he did the murder. And I thought, I mean, Linda and I and my granddaughter, we heard that episode with the rest of the world for the first time. We heard what happened because I didn't know. I still didn't know what happened. And that was just the most amazing. I mean, it was emotional, still emotional. And the lady that told Susan Simpson with Undisclosed, we had never met her, didn't know her at all. We have since met her and have become good friends. And she's been to visit us. We've been to visit her. And we thought that would maybe get me the pardon for reason of innocence is what I'm trying to do. I don't expect the judicial system to ever admit they're wrong. I think if these people come back from the dead, went to the courthouse and told them what happened, they still wouldn't do it. Mm. So the only hope I had was the Pardon Parole Board has the authority to grant a pardon for reason of innocence, and we thought that would get it, but it didn't. Still did. They said the Pardon Parole Board's attorney said the man who did that murder and all those other murders that he supposedly did, about 8 or 9 other murders, wasn't here to defend himself.
Yeah.
And I've heard that before. I heard that with the incompetent attorney. Man, I get off track every time.
No, you're doing fine. In fact, what you're telling us about the experience of hearing that episode on the season of Undisclosed that featured your story,
Yeah,
is something that amazes me, and I think more folks would or could imagine how you must have felt hearing that episode
oh man,
after they hear the rest of that. Once they hear everything that you went through to get to that point, then it becomes that much more amazing what was revealed in that last episode. But I can't imagine. I mean, the idea that you had no idea what you were about to hear. Because I mean, for folks who don't know the Undisclosed podcast very well, I mean, their focus is to look at cases that may not be as they appear, or they may there may have been some in some cases it's someone wrongly convicted, or at least a case where it's in doubt, and
right.
and it's not clear, and they really look very closely at all of the evidence in great detail. I mean, it's an amazing amount of work that they do on every case, and then the same was true with your case.
Yeah, it was, and you got to go back to with this drunk lawyer I had as an attorney. When they did have the trial, he was drunk that day, and they had to postpone the trial to the next day. So we're talking a 5-hour trial. A murder trial was tried in 5 hours. They took a lunch break, they took a recess, and they found me guilty and sentenced me to life in a 5-hour murder trial. You can't do a DUI case in 5 hours, but then, I mean, that's the way it happened. Yeah. And
so if you take out the lunch break and the other breaks, we're probably talking 3 hours or.
Yeah. Well, one of the persons on the jury said that they didn't want to miss any time from work, and it was late in the day. The foreman of the jury, his wife was the judge's secretary. It is a sad situation. I still have a problem discussing that too much without feeling it.
We don't need to go into the details of that, although those details are spelled out in great detail in Undisclosed and also in your own podcast. So I do want to talk some about those as well. But we're close to running out of time on this show. So let me just close by encouraging folks to get to that podcast, either Undisclosed or the Mitchum podcast, to listen to some of those details. But I want to make sure that you come back with us again, because we enjoy talking to you, and we're gonna have to cut this one off though, because we're running out of time here. But I want to thank everyone for being with us on Community Watch, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.